Hey everyone, welcome back to another video of Verified Gains. Happy July 7th. Happy Monday. Hope everyone had a good long weekend. It was the 4th of July, which the biggest news was, of course, the passing up of the big beautiful bill. And, last time I discussed during my video how this could potentially impact the cryptocurrency price. And I think this week will be the first time in which we'll see what the impact of the bill could be. Now, the bill was passed on 4th of July on Friday, very fitting for US politics. And US politics aside, I think it's a very bullish news for the cryptocurrency community. And we're not going to discuss politics here, but and you may take this many different ways. But as far as large US financial institutions, who are the major players in the cryptocurrency market this cycle especially, are concerned, this is very bullish news. So that happened on the 4th. Not a whole lot of movement over the weekend. However, I do believe that this is positive news. For example, I drew this trend line over here just to see in which direction the market may take us. And as you can see, we retested and sort of consolidated above this trend line. Now, normally I don't look at a lot of diagonal trend line, or has been this cycle, but this is actually pretty interesting, and I'll explain why when we take a look at another one of our uh, assets later. And arguably, we sort of broke out of a parallel channel that I saw some people talk about. Okay, so one may argue, okay, this is the parallel channel where we're sort of bouncing up and down. And finally, at this junction over here, we decided to, rally and break out using the $106,000 support line. So that's what we're seeing right here, which is pretty exciting. So let's get rid of these, and we'll just keep this here for now because I do want to see if we break down below it or not. However, if we just remain here in this range today around $108,000, then I'm actually very bullish. I think we might start seeing some explosive movement to the upside. Let's see if there's any news. So Meta Planet continues to acquire more Bitcoin. Okay. All right. And then let's not forget, we still have the federal chair announcement in July. But that said, the recent labor reports showed a pretty solid labor market, and that's really going to be an excuse for the federal chair not to cut the interest rate. So I thought that was also an interesting news to keep in mind. Um, that's it. Let's take a look at Ethereum because I started hearing more and more people talk about Ethereum. And to be quite honest with you, I mean, and the people are getting very impatient and weary, but I just don't see the price going anywhere. However, this is a very solid consolidation since about 2 months ago. So hopefully we see some explosive movements with Ethereum as well, because that is largely going to determine how Turbo does. Okay, so I hold a good amount of Turbo, and so far we've largely been, sideways, arguably in this sort of cyclical pattern for a very long time. And there's really no big catalyst. Look, excuse me. I'm going to be quite honest with you. A lot of people are meme coin this, meme coin that, new technology, new exchanges listing the meme coin. I get that they're all great, bullish news, but without the layer one moving, nothing's really going to happen. So Turbo can do a million things right, but if Ethereum doesn't move, there's not going to be any capital that's trickling into Turbo. So this is largely going to depend on Ethereum's price. And same thing goes with PopCat, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But before that, of course, we must talk about our favorite layer one, Solana. Now I can finally confidently switch this to a green color, okay? I mean, we're actually retesting sort of right below 148, around like 145. But Solana did it. Solana held very well above $148. There's a lot of retest and sideways movement over the weekend as well. However, we held and consolidated above it. So I believe the $148 line is back to being a support line, and I'm patiently waiting for a resumption of the price back to 180. But guess what? This is also going to largely depend on Bitcoin's price movement. I don't think alt season is here yet. Bitcoin dominance is consolidating around 65%, but it's hard to tell whether this is the start of the drop of Bitcoin dominance, which would trigger a mini alt season. I don't think we're there yet because I believe that Bitcoin needs to go up higher for there to be a lot of capital that flows down, trickles down to the layer ones, the layer twos, the meme coins, etc., etc. So I don't think we're there yet. I really would like to see Bitcoin hit maybe around $120,000, $130,000. And then once we have, a 20, 30% pullback from that point, that would make more sense in terms of, and maybe even that is, not enough. But I mean, if there was a 20% pullback from 130, yeah, I mean that would put at the current price around the current price. So, maybe that is actually plausible. And that would make more sense for triggering a mini alt season. All right, going back to Solana. So, I didn't, particularly draw a trend line like I did with Bitcoin here. I mean, technically we broke down below it, but then we're also, holding steady above $148. So forget about it. I don't think it really works here. Okay. However, interestingly enough, PopCat, there is a trend line very similar to Bitcoin that is holding steady. And what does this mean? Usually, it means that there must be some market psychology involved, meaning people are trading based on some sort of technical analysis. And this usually happens if there are enough players involved. So, if there are only, a few people trading PopCat, you basically wouldn't even be forming this kind of a trend line because, this is largely an amalgam of, you know, large data points, a lot of people doing similar things and averaging out to be a trend line. So I thought this was very interesting because this gives me confidence. Hey, maybe a lot of people are actually into PopCat now, and they're also drawing similar lines and saying, okay, once we retest, I'm going to buy more. I'm going to sell. Right now, are we forming like a parallel channel? Yeah, so we're even forming a parallel channel where people are like, okay, if I'm hitting this trend line, I'm selling, buying, selling, buying, and sort of they're trading, and that's usually a very good sign. Now I haven't looked at the volume, but right now maybe that's not even all that important because we really need to see some explosive movements. We need to see a large inflow from retail traders for there to be large volumes, higher volatility, and that just becomes like a snowball effect. I just don't think we're there yet. However, I do think it's a great opportunity to dollar cost average even more. So on each of these red days, I've been buying in. today I'll probably buy more. In any case, it is quite unusual for me to draw a trend line for meme coin, but I'm actually going to keep this one on. Just I'm curious to see, if we're going to hold above this trend line. And if we do, then usually what happens next is we continue to, go along this, if you can imagine like a parallel channel. We continue to move along it until we hit a major horizontal line. And historically, that has been 35 cents for us. So you can tell that junction is around July 20th. And that'll be a very interesting time to see if we actually break out above it. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But the FOMC minutes is, July 9th. So we might, depending on the FOMC minutes, we might even see something better. But we'll have to see. Okay. All right, guys. So basically, the big news was the big beautiful bill passing. I believe it's going to be very bullish. Let's wait and see how the market reacts to the news. Until then, if you have not subscribed yet, please, if you're into PopCat, if you're into Solana, please subscribe because that is, PopCat is my main meme coin. And I don't see a lot of influencers talking about PopCat on YouTube. So if you need a source for PopCat and the latest price action, please subscribe and follow. All right. Thanks for watching again. Thanks for listening in. Bye-bye.